Okay, with the understanding that I would never make a mistake, I'm going to ask the question again. How many times has Franklin Roosevelt been re-elected, Sheriff? Twice, okay? So, preparations for the final dive into Germany is going to be at the same time as we have a regular presidential election in November of 1944, and the war is going well, and the Democrats have no problem nominating President Roosevelt after he agreed to run for a fourth term. So the Democratic Party will renominate President Roosevelt for the presidency after having a discussion with him to see if he would agree to run for a fourth term. Now, he's going to change running mates for this election. His running mate for the vice presidency will be Senator Harry S. Truman of Missouri. Senator Harry S. Truman of Missouri will run on the Democratic ticket with Roosevelt. Now, the Republican Party is going to nominate New York Governor Thomas E. Dewey. And he's going to come back into history when we talk about the election of 1948. So really a spectacular election in American history that really had its craziness about it. But he'll come back into the fold. So the Republican Party is going to nominate New York Governor Thomas E. Dewey. And Roosevelt won a sweeping victory. He was very popular. The war was going well. In the Electoral College, it was 432 to 99. 432 to 99 in the Electoral College in favor of FDR. Now, don't take that Thomas E. Dewey was some pathetic political loser, because he really was not. Even though he was defeated 432 to 99, he will make a stirring comeback in the election of 1948 in one of the most unique elections in American history. So just kind of keep that in mind. So in the election of 1944, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt will be elected to a fourth term, and Senator Harry S. Truman of Missouri will be elected as the nation's vice president. Okay, any questions on that subtopic at all? Okay, our next subtopic then is the end of the German reign in Europe. The end of the German reign in Europe. Now let's kind of surmise what's happening in Europe. How's things going on the Eastern Front for the Allies? Good, because the Russians just won a tremendous victory at Stalingrad, captured 300,000 German soldiers in that particular engagement. We have basically cleared the south, northern Africa, and Italy, and liberated France. So everything is looking very good. And so the Allies decide it's time to what? Take the country of Germany. So after the liberation of France, which we talked about as a result of D-Day, Eisenhower has a plan to take the country of Germany, and the Allies agreed to his plan. Now, Eisenhower was a very conservative individual, and he wanted to take a conservative approach for taking the country of Germany, advancing slowly against the German front. So he basically was not going to go in and hit hard and aggressive. He was going to hit slowly and consistently and finally overtake the country of Germany. That was his plan. And his plan was actually working pretty well until December of 1944. So his conservative approach, advancing slowly against the German front, was working really well until December of 1944. And at that time, the Germans decided to go all in and plan a severe counterattack against the Allies. So they were being kind of beaten back. If you like me boxing Macklin, I got him kind of slowly, just kind of getting him going. I got him in the corner, and I'm thinking, I've just about got him, and then he decides to get a burst of energy, and he's going to counterattack and start punching like crazy at me, hoping that he can hit the knockout punch to, put me down. That's kind of the same thing. Well, during this counterattack, Germany found a weak point in the Allied lines in Belgium. Okay, so as I've got Macklin in the corner, all of a sudden he remembers, gee whiz, Mr. Durr doesn't take a very good punch to the belly, so he finds a weak point in my game and starts working on my belly. Okay? And what Macklin did when he was working on my belly there in the corner is he created a very dangerous bulge in my stomach. Just like the Germans created a dangerous bulge in the Allied lines in Belgium. Now what's the problem with a bulge? Kind of like a hernia, you know what I mean? You get a hernia and you got a weak spot in a certain area of your body when you have a hernia, and then you're susceptible to injury, right? and bad injury with a hernia. And it's kind of the same type of thing. So during this German counterattack, Germany found a weak point in the Allied lines in Belgium, and they created a dangerous bulge. Well, that led to the Allies facing the Germans in Belgium in the Battle of the Bulge. That's what it was called in Belgium. So the Allies realized that they have a dangerous bulge in their lines. They also reinforced those lines, and they engaged the Germans in Belgium in what was known as the Battle of the Bulge. And if Germany wins this Battle of the Bulge, they'll hang on a little longer. But if they lose, they'll be done. Well, the Allies counterattacked the German counterattack, and they pushed the Germans back in Belgium, ended the German counterattack, and won a complete military victory in the Battle of the Bulge. So the Allies counterattacked the German counterattack. They pushed the Germans back in Belgium, ending this German counterattack, and won a complete military victory known as the Battle of the Bulge. Well, after this battle, the German morale completely collapsed. What else is going on besides they're starting to get their butts kicked in battle? What's happening in the mother country? What are we doing 24 hours a day, 7 days a week? Bombing them. So the German defeat in Belgium, along with the continued 24-hour bombing of Germany by the Allies, have completely destroyed the Nazis' effort to continue fighting. Completely destroyed their effort to fight. So, what's Eisenhower want to do now? We have never done it before. He wants to, in February of 1945, invade the country of Germany. He wanted to invade the country of Germany. So in February of 1945, the Allies are ready to invade Germany. And while the Allied Air Force continued their bombing of German cities, Allied troops plunged deep into the heart of Germany from the west, which would be from the France side. Okay? So, Eisenhower makes the decision in February of 45, we've been conservative enough. We had to face a counterattack. We're going to not quit messing around. So they continued to bomb with the Allied Air Force while troops, for the first time, plunged deep into the heart of Germany from the west. Okay, who's coming from the east? And they're pinching Germany right in the middle. Here come the Allies from the west. Who's coming from the east? The Soviet Union. And the idea is to kind of meet in the middle and crush the country of Germany. So the plan would call for a sweeping of the entire country. The Allied and Russian forces were to meet in the center of Germany after taking over the country. Finally, on April 25th, kiddos, of 1945, the Allied army met with the Russian army at the Elbe River in Germany, ensuring that the German countryside had been swept clean. So it was on April 25th of 1945, April 25th of 1945, that the Allied army from the west met the Russian army from the east at the Elbe River in Germany, which ensured that the German countryside had been swept clean. What happened 5 days later on April 30th? Anybody know? What? Adolf Hitler committed suicide in Berlin on April 30th, 1945. So 5 days after the Allied army met the Russian forces at the Elbe River, 5 days later, on April 30th, 1945, Adolf Hitler commits suicide in Berlin. His 1,000-year Reich lasted a total of 12. His 1,000-year Reich, which is on your ID sheet, lasted a total of 12 years. He claimed that he would rule Germany, he would have a 1,000-year Reich. What's another word for Reich? Empire. He believed he would rule Germany for 1,000 years. He ruled it for 12. Ruled it for 12. His 1,000-year Reich, 1,000-year empire, had lasted a total of 12 years. As a result of all of this, on May 8th of 1945, the German High Command surrendered unconditionally to the Allies. On May 8th, 1945, the German High Command surrendered unconditionally to the Allies. Obviously, Hitler was not a part of that unconditional surrender because he had taken his own life. So on May 8th, 1945, the German High Command surrendered unconditionally to the Allies. This day of May 8th, 1945 will go down in American history as VE Day, Victory in Europe, VE Day. So on May 8th, 1945, the German High Command surrendered unconditionally to the Allies, a day known in American history as VE Day. Okay, one of the things you'll get an opportunity to do, and it's not a real pick-me-up, but it's important, is you'll get a chance to see the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C. when we're there, which kind of takes us into our next subtopic, which is Nazi horrors, the Holocaust. Nazi horrors, the Holocaust. Now, as hard as this might be to believe, it wasn't until after our victory in Europe that the Allies really found out anything about Hitler's treatment of Jewish people in Europe. Really didn't have a real clue most of the war how they were being treated. So the joy of victory in Europe was clouded by the shocking news of Hitler's treatment of the Jewish people in Europe. And it was after our victory in Europe that the world heard in detail about the blood-curdling crimes the Nazis had committed against the Jews in Europe. So again, the joy of victory in Europe was clouded by the shocking news of Hitler's treatment of the Jewish people in Europe, and the world now heard in detail the blood-curdling crimes the Nazis had committed against the Jews in Europe. And these horrifying crimes are what we refer to in history as the Holocaust. Okay? Well, how did we find out how poorly these people were being treated? When we advanced into Poland and Germany in the spring of 1945, the Allies came face to face with which was Hitler's final solution for the Jewish population. They came upon what? What did they come upon? Concentration extermination camps. They had really no idea what was going on. So when Allied troops advanced into Poland and then into Germany in the spring of 1945, they came face to face with Hitler's final solution for the Jewish people of Germany. And German extermination camps were located all around Germany, and it was estimated that they had claimed the lives of 6 million Jews, along with 6 million more what they called undesirables. 6 million Jewish people were killed by Hitler in those extermination camps, along with 6 million more that the German hierarchy deemed as undesirables. 12 million people. Now, we know the 6 million Jews, but who were some of the undesirables that also were put to death? Anybody have a guess? Yes, Steve.
Gay people.
Homosexuals, that's exactly right. Homosexual people were put to death.
Gypsies.
Gypsies is also correct. Very good. Homosexuals, very good, and gypsies. And then citizens of 2 surrounding countries. Anybody want to guess what countries? Poland and Yugoslavia. So these undesirables that were put to death along with the 6 million Jews, which also added to 6 million, were homosexuals, gypsies, citizens of Poland and citizens of Yugoslavia. Y-U-G-O-S-L-A-V-I-A. Y-U-G-O-S-L-A-V-I-A. What do you call the people of Poland? What do they call them? Poles, or Poles. What do they call the people of Yugoslavia? Slavs, S-L-A-V-S. So, German extermination camps had claimed the lives of 6 million Jews who were put to death, along with 6 million more undesirables, which included citizens of Poland, or Poles, citizens of Yugoslavia, or Slavs, gypsies, and homosexuals. Probably the most famous extermination camp, the one that maybe got the most press, was Auschwitz. And photographs were taken at Auschwitz, which shows bodies stacked like cordwood, and survivors so thin they were barely alive. So Auschwitz was probably the most publicized extermination camp in Germany. Pictures showed bodies stacked like cordwood. It's like you're stacking up a cord of wood. And survivors they found so thin that they were barely alive. Why didn't people take more interest in what was happening to those individuals? And the reason the Jewish people, basically kids, the fate of the Jewish people in Germany was hindered through discrimination. They were discriminated against. Okay? There was a worldwide anti-Semitism across the country. You ever watch, you guys are too young, but people treated Jewish people like they treated African American people and Japanese people and Hispanic people. They were discriminated against because they were Jewish. If you ever watch the old All in the Family Archie Bunkers, he's calling them heaps, and I mean, they were just as discriminated against as minorities. And because of that, it affected immigration legislation in the United States. Okay? We are a country of immigrants, are we not? And we had a pretty open immigration policy during World War II, especially the early stages, but we basically legislation shut down the immigration of Jewish people into our country. Policymakers were discouraged from assuming responsibility for the fate of these refugees. We're always having refugees come in now, are we not? Refugees come in this country all the time. We feel like we have a responsibility to take care of people that are being treated poorly in other countries. Our present president has a little bit of trouble with immigration, and he doesn't want to cut off refugees to a point, but he wants to not bring undesirables into our country. Is that true? By building a wall. What's the definition of undesirables? Everybody has a different. You have the German definition of them. Okay, everybody has a definition. So that's the problem with people that argue with President Trump about this, refugee immigration problem, is that everybody has a different definition of what undesirables are. He talks about not bringing in people with a criminal record or drug record. Probably makes sense, right? But then they twist that. Well, you're again. It's just a crazy thing. So it's no different. Well, during World War II, at one time, the State Department did allow 21,000 Jewish refugees to enter the United States, which was very unusual. So during World War II, there was a time when 21,000 Jewish refugees were allowed in by the State Department. And after that, President Roosevelt got tremendous pressure on what are we going to do with these Jewish refugees? The ones that were lucky enough not to what, Delaney? End up in the concentration camps. What are we going to do for these people that are fighting for their lives over there? We had really no idea what really was happening to them, but we knew they were in trouble. And so the State Department lets in 21,000 during the war, and then by 1944, President Roosevelt's really getting heat on trying to help these people that are probably going to be killed if they stay over in Europe, especially in the Germany area. So what Roosevelt does is he establishes what was known as the War Refugee Board. The War Refugee Board, it should be on your sheet, but it probably isn't. I'll write it down. The War Refugee Board, and it acted as it sounded. It helped move more than 200,000 European Jews to safe havens. All in the United States? No, all over countries that were on the Allied side. So in 1944, the War Refugee Board, which was established by President Roosevelt, helped move more than 200,000 European Jews to safe havens in other countries. Some to the United States, but a lot to other countries. But it wasn't until we actually penetrated Germany and took the country over that we really realized what they were doing to these people. Which leads me to several questions, and I don't have the answer, but how do 6 million people let 60,000 people march you into these gas chambers? I mean, they were such a... The Jewish religion are people of forgiveness and people of kindness. They didn't, I think they were just unworldly. I don't think they had any idea, because wouldn't it seem like 6 million people could uprise against a country, and even though you're maybe going to be killed, you're probably going to be killed anyway. But 6 million people, and even, what's the population of Wyoming? Anybody know? What is it? 500,000. So 12 times our population of these people were marched into these concentration camps and gassed. Wait till you get, probably the thing that will hit you the most when you get in the Holocaust Museum, and I'm just going to tell you right now, some of you will be really into it, some of you maybe not be into it. Some kids spend 30 minutes in there, some kids spend 2 hours and wish they had more. It's all kind of what your interest is. But I've been in there a couple times. I've been there 18 times to DC. You know how many times I've been in the Holocaust Museum? Twice. I went the first year, and I went the second year, and I'm telling you, it's not something that you enjoy seeing every year. So generally what Mrs. Bilodeau and I do, because she's been in there also, is we drop you off in front of the Holocaust Museum, and then we go eat at the Ebbets Grill and meet you in 2 hours back at a place, so you can take your time and you know, that's incredible. The thing I'll never forget though, and you'll see it, is the